Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be shedding a light on the upcoming visit by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Washington, meeting President Donald Trump. We're also going to be talking about the future of the Egyptian-American relations, talking about the Palestinian-Israeli issue that should be topping the agenda of the meeting. Also, the prospects of the upcoming Arab summit that will be held in Jordan later this month. And joining us here in the studio to shed more light on these issues is Dr. Muhammad Hussein, the former advisor to of New York and a member of the Egyptian Foreign Affairs. Dr. Abdel Khaled, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our discussion, let's check out this report regarding the Palestinian cause that will be topping the agenda of the discussions between President al-Sisi and President Trump, and we'll be right back.
President on Monday that the Palestinian cause would top the agenda of his talks with the U.S. President Donald Trump when he kicks off an official April, stressing the significant role played by Washington in kick-starting the stalled peace negotiations and ending the decades-old conflict. President al-Sisi made his announcement during his talks with the visiting Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Cairo. The talk centered on the latest developments in the occupied Palestinian territories, in addition to efforts underway to push forward the stalled Middle East peace process, as well as a number of regional issues of mutual concern. Abbas reviewed with President al-Sisi his latest contacts with the new U.S. administration, which confirmed that the Palestinian side is abiding by reaching an integrated settlement with the Israeli side. The President reiterated that Egypt would continue its role to react a just, comprehensive and lasting peace in order that Palestinians could hold their state with Jerusalem as its capital. For his part, Abbas hailed Egypt's role to solve the Palestinian cause as well as and international efforts to realize a Palestinian unity and protect the Palestinian people. Palestinian President expressed his keenness to continue consultations and coordination with President al-Sisi, adding that he hopes the upcoming summit in Jordan would succeed in issuing resolutions that consolidate Arab unity and finding practical solutions to solve chronic problems in the Arab region.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, starting off our discussion with Dr. Abdel Khaled. Dr. Abdel Khaled, you are a member of the Egyptian, been former advisor to the mayor of New York, Giuliani, during a very in the U.S. history, the modern U.S. history. Now, you have been an observer and an active player in all the current political developments that have been taking place over there. Now, looking at what's been happening in Egypt, before we start our discussion, what has been happening over the past 6 years, for instance, since the 2011 revolution? How have you been observing it and following up these developments? How do you evaluate the progression of the political life here in Egypt?
Well, actually, we turn out from a chaos into coming back into a state of Egypt. Egypt, we got it back, and the 30th of June basically was a turning point in our life that we really went back into becoming a state. Obviously, from 2011 until now, there is a lot of developments. Of course, on the international front, there was a big conspiracy, whether we like it or not, and they were all designed to put Egypt down on its knees, and they call it the Arab Springs. But thank God it didn't work out, because the Egyptian people were not stupid, and the army leaders are vigilant, and we believe that what happened is now is the best for the country, and I think that Egypt now is moving forward. We still have a lot of obstacles but I think that the Sisi foreign affairs at this time, I think it's working out very well. That everybody's conceding, including Donald Trump, including Angela Merkel, and other leaders in Europe, that now the concession should happen, and the Abdel Fattah Sisi leadership worth respecting and follow through with that.
Well, Dr. Abdel Khaled, you saw different administrations in the U.S., whether if it was Bush or Obama and now Trump.
Clinton.
Yeah. So how do you feel the American perspective of what was going on here in Egypt during that time? And do you feel that a serious change of strategy within the relationship with Egypt, or the relationship between the U.S. administration and the Arab states or the Middle East as a whole, obviously in light of the Arab Spring that took place since 6 years ago? Well,
you know, you got to differentiate between, or distinguish between both, between two things, where the American administration, there's two different perspectives here, because the American people obviously is for freedom of expressions, for equity and justice and all these good, nice things. And unfortunately, some of them believe what they have in their own network. And we know that most of their own network is really biased. And even they attacked Trump, and even Trump said, "You are all liars, and you not bring up the truth." So the American people, in a way, the bottom line with them is that they are warm-feeling people. They support the Egyptians for their freedom, but they didn't know what exactly is happening with the agenda that Obama and Hillary Clinton and Condoleezza Rice before have in mind for Egypt's Mubarak at that time. And we thank God that this conspiracy did not work out. Otherwise, we will be in a big trouble. So I really think it's a new era now in the U.S. administration. Trump himself is controversial, by the way, with his own party, Republican, and also with the media anyway. It's too early really to test Trump foreign affairs, and that's will lead us to what's happening, what's going to happen when President Sisi visit him in April. What's the outcome on the agenda for Egypt in the Middle East as a major role player? What's going to happen for the Palestinian-Israeli problems? And all these issues, I think, is the future of Syria and Libya. So it's going to be in the discussions with the president when he goes to the United States.
Yes. Well, Doctor, as you've mentioned, if the Arab Spring was part of a conspiracy or a grand master plan, do you feel that the U.S. administration, not the U.S. citizens and societies, do you feel that they actually considered that this is a plan that's not going to work and it has failed and they need to find a new way of dealing with these Arab states? Or do they still think, well, maybe if we, play our cards right, maybe there is some future or some hope for that plan to work?
Well, anyone in the intelligence will tell you that the Americans always have different scenarios, and each scenario is ready to be implemented. If this didn't work out, they have the second scenario that is going to be imposed immediately. So what I'm saying is that, well, this started a long time ago with Condoleezza Rice, was when she was the National Security Advisor, and then when she was Secretary of State. This is 2005 that they are preparing something huge and big, that it's not going to be nice, it's going to be nasty. So everybody knows here in Egypt that when it's going to happen, we didn't know, but there was something is being cooked in Washington for Egypt. And it's just astonishing that Egypt is supposed to be one of the important allies to the United States. And here, this is what's happening, and we are all of a sudden pushing, all these groups and under the slogan of democracy and centers and NGOs, and but in the end, this was not designed for the people of Egypt for democracy. No, it was designed to bring down the regime. And it's not only to bring the regime down, it's also to bring the Egypt down. And this is, everything has just got out of control. I mean, you could see this everywhere. Iraq is gone, Syria is almost, Libya, and who else? So, and Syria is in a bad situation. So, but I think that they realized, the Egyptian people stopped and they thought about it, and when the army stepped in and they resist what they were trying, and all these conspiracies still going on, but now we are a lot stronger, and I think they have a second thought about this, and now they have to deal with the new, not the new administration anymore, but with Egypt and Sisi's regime here, based on our objectives, not their own, only their objectives.
Yes. Dr. Abdel Khaled, the latest, the political developments that took place over the past 6 years with all the Arab Spring. Now, it started during Obama's administration, and if Hillary Clinton was going to win her elections, people expected some sort of a continuation for the same strategy dealing with the Middle Eastern and Arab states. Now, with winning the biggest office in the US administration, everyone's expecting a different strategy, a different approach, a much bolder way of dealing with these issues and the Arab states. Now, should we be hopeful? I mean, every administration always says the Palestinian-Israeli file is definitely on top of our missions and objectives to solve and deal with. Should we expect anything different with this new administration? As you've mentioned, Trump is a controversial figure, controversial personality, but should we be hopeful on the political level in dealing with these main issues? You've mentioned the Palestinian cause, the Syrian issue, the Libyan issue. Do you feel that there is something cooking now, differently?
Well, in my judgment, I mean, the American foreign affairs has been always, regardless of Republican or Democrats in the House or in the White House, is never, we will never change when it comes to Israel. It's even though I mean, there's something even more dangerous now, which is he's trying to implement the bill that's been passed by the Senate a long time ago, which is moving the embassy of the United States into Jerusalem. Now he wants to implement it that every president came to office, Clinton and then Obama, really, even though that this is a law by Congress and it's been passed, but they never implement it because they know the reactions, international reactions, as well as the Arab reactions. And now Trump is coming. One of his promises in his campaign is that he's going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. This is remain to be seen. If this is going to help the cause for the Arab-Israeli conflict, I don't think so. So I'm not going to be hopeful for. In fact, I'm going to be very careful and cautious about any hope with Donald Trump. The only thing is different is that Donald Trump, when he sat down with President Sisi for more than 3 hours, and when he was there before the election, he came out with a very good perception that President Sisi is a leader, and he is not what he's been thinking about and what had been told about President Sisi. And I think this is give some sort of good, warm relations between the two men, and that maybe will ease things. But politics is politics. Egypt have own objectives, have their own strategy, independent. We have military aid, we have from the United States, and Obama is playing games with us by cutting supplies and stuff like that. So no, I don't think that's why Egypt now is diversify the weapon purchase from all over because we don't want to be in that critical situation.
Yes.
I think that maybe on that issue, yes, the military assistance to resume even stronger to fight terrorism, and I think that Donald Trump will support that, and I think he will support Sisi of renewing the cause and the call for moderate Islam, not radical. Because that's really what we need to do. That I think he will support him with this. Sisi for a peaceful solution in Syria through negotiation, not by taking out the regime itself, because we know what happened in others.
Yes.
So I think there is a lot of common ground between Sisi and Donald Trump. Differences when it comes to, I believe, the Palestinian-Israeli problem.
A little bit later, more in depth about the Egyptian-American relations. But going back to the Palestinian-Israeli file, you're saying that, well, maybe we shouldn't be too hopeful. Do you, for instance, see the finding a two-state solution something really recommended at times a lot of the Israeli side profoundly? Now, do you feel that there is still hope for some sort of serious discussions or negotiations based on a two-state solution, or is that just a political formality, just discussing the Palestinian-Israeli issue, and then we're going to start, and then at some point it's going to stop again?
Well, let's go back into what they did in the beginning when Arafat was alive, and when they have the negotiation and they're trying to make peace. Rabin, then after, later on, and then I think there is a major problem is that the main issues for returning back the border, how you draw the borders, all these real issues that is still since 1979 when Anwar Sadat signed the Camp David Agreement is still on the table, and nothing is changing about this. In fact, the Palestinians is losing more lands today as we speak, and they will never get what they are going to get at the time when Anwar Sadat asked him to sit down and Minahal Aswan to sit down and just get it over with. But now it's a different ballgame. Now we cannot see there is an Arab League. We cannot see there is any pressure from a player, but Egypt realized that through diplomacy, through reasoning, this is how we're going to approach the Middle East process, because there is no other way. Because, and I don't see the Arab world is making enough pressure on any country, specifically United States, to push the peace process with the Palestinians and the Israelis, and that's what's the main issue right now.
Yes, Dr. Abdel Khaled, as you've mentioned, well, talking about moving the embassy to Jerusalem, definitely the American-Israeli relations are always strong. Now, do you see the change in the relationship between the U.S. administration and Iran affecting how the Israeli-Palestinian file is shape up? Because obviously Iran and Israel have been at headlocks for quite some time. Now, after signing the nuclear disarmament agreement, still Trump imposed sanctions, economic sanctions against Iran. Do you feel now that Israel is already taking its good share of really feeling the wrath of the U.S. administration on Iran, and also the United States and Israel have signed a 10-year military agreement? Do you feel that maybe in return for these things there will be hope for Israel to maybe just let go a little bit?
Well, let's put it this way: when the Israelis and the Israelis complaining about the Iranians, and they are not happy about what happened with the agreements with the Americans in the EU and the Iranians' agreement regarding the nuclear agreement. But in the end, I think the Israelis will stop short from any real threat with the Iranians. The Americans try to compensate them in another way, like you said, and this long deal of armory deal and big aid, if we would talk about it. This is going to ease the pressure on the Israeli conflict, because simply you have two factions are divided now, and they are far apart now. The Hamas in Gaza and Fatah and West Bank and Jerusalem. And this is another problem, is that if you're not united, and the Hamas is taking a different approach, and now there is an Iranian influence with it, and the Palestinian, the other side in the West Bank. So, you know, what's happening is that any Prime Minister, Netanyahu, for example, is saying, well, who I'm going to sit down with? Who can guarantee that if we have a peace and agreement, that people from Hamas is not going to attack me? Or who is going to guarantee to me, so you guys are not united, so you know, you're not binding. You cannot be binded by whatever agreements you're going to deal with us. And that's what is the problem, is that the division among the Palestinians also is part of the problem. The Arab League and the weak approach and weak diplomacy, that's all this is leading, is that the Israelis really don't care, and they keep building settlements. And in the absence of any real work with the Arab League, I don't see anything in the near future will be fruitful.
Do you think that there is hope for a unity within the Palestinian division? Well,
money talks. With each other. It just turned out to be like they fighting the cause, the Palestinian cause, by, you know, getting money. No, we don't want any money. We want you to recognize that you have to have a two-state solution. You have to sit down and united, because if you are united, that's going to put the Israelis in a dead corner. They cannot just get out of it.
Yes.
But as long as you are divided, you make it hard for any negotiator to go forward with that.
Yes, definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, obviously the upcoming visit by President Sisi to Washington is slated to be early April. Let's regarding the future of the Egyptian-American relations, and we'll be right back.
Egypt and the United States are bracing for bright bilateral relations in various domains as Washington elected new President Donald Trump in January 2017. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi was the first Arab leader to congratulate Trump as he took over the helm. The two leaders enjoy good ties and appreciate each other. Before his election, the Egyptian-U.S. ties had witnessed a setback, especially when Egyptian ousted Mohammed Morsi as president and elected el-Sisi in landmark general elections. Hopes are now high will resume its mediating role to push forward the stalled Middle East peace negotiation. The U.S. had minimal dealings with Egypt when it was controlled by the Ottoman Empire before 1882 and Britain between 1882 and 1945. President Gamal Abdel Nasser antagonized the U.S. by his pro-Soviet policies and anti-Israeli rhetoric. American policy has been to provide strong support for Israeli interests in the region. After the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Egyptian foreign policy began to shift as a result of the change in Egypt's leadership from Nasser to Anwar al-Sadat and the emerging peace process between Egypt and Israel. Sadat realized reaching a settlement of the Arab-Israeli conflict is a precondition for Egyptian development. To achieve this goal, Sadat ventured to enhance U.S.-Egyptian relations with Israel. Military cooperation between the United States and Egypt is probably the strongest aspect of their strategic partnership. Egypt was described during the Clinton administration as the most prominent player in the Arab world and a key U.S. ally in the Middle East. U.S. military assistance to Egypt was considered part of the administration's strategy to maintaining continued availability of Gulf energy resources and to secure the Suez Canal. Despite differences and periods of friction in relations between the two countries, the U.S.-Egyptian relations under Hosni Mubarak has evolved, moving beyond the Middle East peace process towards an independent bilateral friendship. It was in the U.S. interest that Egypt was able to present moderate voices in Arab councils and persuade other Arab states to join the peace process and to know.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we're also joined by Dr. محمد عبد الحليم, the political analyst. Dr. Abdul Halim, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, Dr. Abdul Halim, how do you view the upcoming visit by President Sisi to Washington meeting Donald Trump? What are your expectations of this visit?
Right. I would say that it seems to be quite very much crucial type of visit, actually, to the United States. Particularly, I mean, it would come immediately after what you might call about 14 or 15 years of absence, actually, on the American scene, on the political scene, actually. So supposedly that the timing is very much crucial, and the agenda, actually, that will be discussed in like manner will be also very much crucial. Truly, actually, I mean, there is a large number, actually, of subjects and objects to be discussed in detail. And among these subjects also, you know, the perpetual and the everlasting, actually, problematic situation of the Palestinian problem. There will be an attempt, actually, on the part of President Sisi, actually, to try to mend it side by side with Abu Mazen, actually, whose previous visit actually to Egypt a couple of days ago would seem to be quite very much fruitful after a couple of you know, I mean, you know, absence of his own political presence actually in the scene. Mm-hmm. That side by side with the existence again and the existence again of Abu Mazen on the political scene of the United States of America, after the lapse of all this long period, actually, of the presence of any Egyptian president, will be dealt also with a large number of other issues, such as, you know, I mean, the Libyan problem, the Syrian, you know, I mean, problematic situation, and the Iran, you know, I mean, threatening voice that would seem to be quite, you know, I mean, menacing every now and again a large number of Arab countries, particularly its own seizure, actually, of about three, actually. So I think that the promising visit and the would-be visit, actually, of President Sisi during the first months, actually, of April will be, well, I mean, highly crucial, full of a large number of issues to be discussed on a large scale. In much the same way that still there is a wide debate concerning the Libyan case, particularly immediately after the Libyan parliament would deny the existence of, you know, I mean, the wifaq hukuma, you know, I mean, on the part of, you know, Faiz Sarraj, what you might call actually the rehabilitation government, whereas Khalifa Qasim Haftar is endorsing every now and again, actually, you know, I mean, the existence of a purely Libyan existence on the scene. They are still divided until today. The Egyptian role that will be played within the next couple of weeks will be highly crucial and will be, I think, you know, I mean, in the interests of the Arab countries, particularly, it will be culminated immediately after the next summit that will be held actually at the end of this month, 29th.
Definitely. Dr. Abdul Khaliq, now, what happened with Egypt during the past few years after the Arab Spring was quite different than the developments that took place in Syria and Libya, for instance. Now, does that mean that the future of the Egyptian-American relations will be a little bit different in terms of the strategy being followed? Do they does the US administration now deal with Egypt in a sees now within the Arab states as Egypt and Jordan as well, along with Jordan, as the main Arab players. Now, do you see a different kind of treatment or a different kind of relationship between the US administration and Egypt along with Jordan?
Well, let's put it this way. Egypt has been and will always be one of the major main players in the Middle East, and the United States cannot afford to lose it. That's number one. And number two is that, yes, after what happened here in Egypt in a couple of years, now they understand that the different approach in the relations with the Egyptians, the American with the Egyptians, will be totally different. It will be based, like you said, Sisi, when President Sisi said that, based on respect and mutual interest. And that's the way it's going to be. We're not going to take orders from anyone. If we want to have good relations with us, to common grounds, serve our purpose, serve our interest, you're welcome. There's not a problem. But you're not going to tell me what to do. And that was a different tone of the Egyptians after the 2011. And I think this is now the Americans understand this. And it's evident also, like I said, when President Sisi start to go out there and get diversified weapons deals places around the world, when Obama administration start to play this game of just preventing because we want to punish you, bad boy. No, this is not going to work. This is an old classic American way of dealing with he's really underestimating Egypt, and I think now the new administration and anyone in Congress or Senate today, I think from my experience with these guys, they have a second thought about we need to treat Egypt differently, and that was even evidenced by some of the candidates in the last elections when they quoted Abdel Fattah Sisi, said we need a leader Sisi to fight terrorism, the courage of Abdel Fattah Sisi to do that. So that's basically for us as Egyptians as a major turn, is that the American administrations and the policymakers there will focus on how to enhance and empower the relations and repair the damage that Obama administration have done in the past couple of years.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Dr. Al-Halim, now, as you've mentioned, there will be the Arab Summit that will be held end of this month, preceding President Sisi's visit to Washington. Obviously, they will be discussing a lot of issues regarding the Palestinian-Israeli file, the crises in as well, also combating terrorism. Now, we've always been saying Egypt needs to be, the Western allies, the US administration should make use of Egypt's expertise in dealing with terrorism and combating terrorism within this region at least. How do you feel the American-Egyptian relations will take advantage of the Egyptian expertise in combating terrorism, if at all?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look, for the history of Egypt as well as the Egyptian relations with other European countries, as much as other adjacent, Arab countries, actually, you'll find that, Egypt would seem to be quite playing every now and again the role of the leader, actually, particularly in that area of expertise, in that particular issue, which is putting an end for, extremism as much as terrorism, actually. You can really anticipate a great deal of mutual identification between the American new administration on the one side and the Egyptian. You can really say that the Egyptian way of putting an end of, for all these terrorist acts would seem to be quite, propagating what you might call a first-hand knowledge, actually, a first-hand experience of, with modern means of technology of the weapons and all these means through the aid of which they will try every now and again. And I think that the new American administration would take benefit and would benefit a lot, actually. And I think during the course of the previous inauguration talk on the part of Donald Trump. He did say something about, putting an end for, the 7 banned countries that were access into the United States of America, and so far as they would seem to be quite playing a role of, either propagating terrorism or, sharing hands side by side with terrorists here, there, and everywhere. And fortunately, that Egypt had never, ever been, in addition to this, before the inauguration took actually on the part of Donald Trump, I think in the UN Security Council, there was a little meeting between President Fattah al-Sisi on the one hand. I think there is some hidden chemistry actually between the two. There is a certain sense of grace on the part of the new American administration represented by Donald Trump about the sort of the effective role that had been played during the last 2 years in Northern Sinai, particularly by the part of our own military forces and armed forces under the leadership of, our President Fattah al-Sisi. I think that the new American administration would look with great deal of respectability, great deal of sense of dignity actually on Egypt, not because of its own historical role, not because only of its own cultural heritage actually that go back to a large number of years, as much as all the Europeans and the Americans. Their own first-hand knowledge and first-hand expertise about combating terrorism, as you might have said, about, sharing hands side by side and playing that sort of very much effective role, attempting to put an end for the Daesh groups in Libya. Despite the fact that our armed forces did not penetrate in any conceivable respect within Deir ez-Zor or Latakia or, any Syrian territory. But the fact remains that Egypt and would always be playing the role of being a leader as the best among the rest, among all the other Arab countries actually, combating terrorism, finalizing extremism, and I think sharing hands side by side with Donald Trump.
Yes. Dr. Abdelkhair, as you mentioned, Egypt now does not solely depend on military assistance coming from the US actually. It diversified its sources for weaponry and ammunition. So the relationship doesn't mainly depend on the military assistance coming from the US. As you mentioned, now the US administration needs to deal with Egypt and the regime headed by President al-Sisi in a different way. What about Egypt? What do we want from our relationship from the US administration, and what do we have to offer? What are our cards? What do we have to offer that they would want, and what do we want from the future relations between both countries?
Well, it's an obvious answer basically is that Egypt is basically being the main player and the leader in the Arab world regardless throughout history and even in the modern time that we are here. It's our destiny to be in that position basically historically and now is that Egypt is not only the largest Arab country, it's also with the rich history and with the most powerful in the area and also culture-wise and education-wise and everything we could. We're almost 100 million now. So Egypt is, and also Egypt is the only one could really stand for the common, what they call it now, we're not enemies, but the common enemy is Israel. Else will be able to, so that's concern. The security of Israel will be in the back of the U.S. Our cards basically is that it's very simple. Without Egypt, there was never going to be a stability in the Middle East, regardless where you're at. And I think that's why they backed up when it came to that the Arab Spring got out of hand. And that's why we are saying is that Egypt is the main player, not only a main player by virtue of talking, no, but actual Egypt playing a major role in diffusing conflicts all over. Libyan right now, as Dr. Muhammad talked about it, Libyan is a major headache not only for us, it's for European. And I will doubt that Angela Merkel spoke to Abdel Fattah al-Sisi about the situation because a lot of refugees just, sail from Libyan side. So there is a major problem. Egypt could diffuse these problems. Egypt could stabilize the region. lots in terms of rich soil, agriculture. Egypt have natural resources. So there is a lot to benefit from. And I think that for the U.S. as well, they understand that their interest that Egypt will be stabilized. And I recall Dennis Ross. We all know Dennis Ross. We were farewell partied for David Walsh when he was an ambassador here before he goes back to the States. And we talked about it, about Egypt. What do you think? What do you think of Egypt at that point? And he said, well, Egypt is like a floating ball on the water at this time. It will never fly and will never sink. But that's what we don't want right now. We want Egypt to go. We don't want to sink. A lot of people want us to sink. And this has never happened and will never happen. So I think there is a lot to gain from the visit of Abdel Fattah Sisi with Donald Trump.
So you would say that Egypt would mainly want some sort of political stability and recognition by the U.S. administration, along with a lot of maybe economic cooperation?
Economic cooperation as well. They understand that Egypt have a lot to offer. Strategic geographical locations that we have. So they will be very, I don't think that the Americans are stupid. I know that they are smart. So I think that we should take advantage of this, that we are opening our arms for foreign investment. And I think after the economic, there is a lot of foreign investors are interested in Egypt, and they start pouring some money into Egypt, and that's good news for us on the long term. But I think President Sisi's visit is going to be very crucial on all fronts: economic, military, political, and I think that's what we have to wait. We cannot speculate at this point.
Yes. Definitely. Dr. Al-Halim, now, if we are talking about how the U.S. administration will be dealing with the crises within the Middle East and the Arab world, crises such as the Syrian one, the Libyan one. Now, if we are waiting or expecting a new strategy by the U.S. administration, why do we not see, or should we expect to see some sort of a similar strategy as the one Russia has been taking? Because Russia has been taking very decisive bold steps in dealing with these crises. Should we expect the U.S. administration to follow suit or cooperate with the Russian forces and the allies in dealing with the crises in this manner, or maybe something totally?
Well, I mean, within the political game, everything would seem to be quite... And a very good politician who would never ever say yes. I really insist on saying so. And in much the same way that I would never say no. But maybe he's always there. So wide open for discussion, actually. And if you really go back to his own inauguration speech, you can really detect what sort of man that we are going to deal with. He's very much cunning, very much resourceful, very much sharp, very much arrogant, very much self-confident of his own abilities. As much as of, the fortification of his own nation, his extreme sense of belief that he's going to achieve the American dream, side by side with all the aspirations of the middle-class people, actually, of his own, of his own citizens, I would say, would give us the impression that figure. He's a new man in a very that would seem to be quite very much keeping an eye on the American citizen from A to Z. The way it stands, actually, may be very much, representing the fact that he will completely change all his own political game. In much the same way that he would seem to be quite, to a greater extent, I would say, so to speak, very much lenient with, the Egyptian political leadership. Very much, finding more than one thing in common, actually, with the perspectives of, at least of putting an end and trying to put an end and combating, actually, every now and again, that sort of, Islamist terrorist groups, actually, as represented by the Muslim Brotherhood, actually. Of their own separation, of getting into, actually, the United States of America, you can really find that would try to look on Egypt in absolutely different way, in a more, dignified, assuming a great stature that it had never ever been before during the time of Barack Obama, actually. The extreme sense of waste of time, of waste of energy, of the achievements that had been, expatriated during the previous period of will be for good away. The strategy of different. He's neither going to the extreme side of it, in much the same way that he would never ever actually. Very much lenient, but we all as Arabs actually, as members within the Arab League actually, would have to put into our own consideration one main fundamental fact, which is the new emergence of the new American president, representing the new American by the box, in much of the same way that is to be there by the reception Jewish party, actually. The hidden force that is playing such a very vital, very much crucial of the Palestinian case. A couple of weeks ago, if you may remember, the fact that Netanyahu was meeting Donald Trump. At one stage, Donald Trump would say, two-state solution, and then all of a sudden, one-state solution. And then all of a sudden, Benjamin Netanyahu would get into I cannot anticipate or imagine the existence of a Jewish state had it not been for the fact that there was would have to be very much cautious, even in our own in our own inaugurating a new type of, political roles that are to be played with him. And much looking on the Middle East, I would say, in another way that would give us the impression that we are dealing with a new type of man, very much resourceful, as I have much said, very much enthusiastic about the Egyptian political leadership to a greater extent, but with a great deal of cautious on our own part, actually.
Definitely. Dr. Abdel Khaliq, now a lot of ceremonial institution that is not really effective. There are institutions that are good at meeting, condemning certain actions, or referring to certain political developments. Real steps, offering real solutions that are taken seriously on the ground. Now, there will be an Arab summit that will be taking place later this month. Obviously, they're going to be talking about all these issues that we've been discussing. How hopeful are you of such? Will we be taken seriously as an Arab League or Arab summit by or the Western or international community, or do they have their own strategies and ideas of how to deal with things?
Well, if you today, you will see it is more divided than ever. From day one, never been effective, by the way. And if they were effective at some point, that would like fraction to the long history of their existence. League. Who could be effective in the Arab League today? What's happened? African nations, they call themselves now North African nations, Tunisian, Morocco. They are in Mauritania. They are in their own worlds. It's like, it's totally different. They don't bother me. At the GCC now already, why you need GCC already, for 5 Gulf states when you have a body within a larger body. And even this is not even successful as well. So what is the purpose of the Arab League? Because when you are united, you have one cause, you're big, you could make demands, you affect politics, you could get what you want, and it's really I don't recall where, but when Arafat was the siege Arafat compound, and at the same time preventing him from going to the Arab League summit, and the Arab League is offering a peace plan. I mean, they're out of your mind. What's going on here? So about condemning, you know, you have Arab countries within our and it's only this, but with all said and done, Egypt is maintaining and trying to maintain and continue and believe in Arab that dangerous, and I hope that the Arab Spring lesson that others to learn from it, and that we need to be united. This is remained to be seen, but unfortunately I see some Arab states, they still did not learn that lesson.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, definitely the much anticipated visit by President Sisi to Washington. Outcomes of with the Arab summit that will be taking place later this month. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank our very distinguished الحليم, the political analyst. I'd also like to thank very much Dr. محمد حسام, the former advisor to the Mayor of New York and member of the Egyptian Council. Very much for joining us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on our